So there are two prayers here, and just as, again, always it's good to remember the meaning. The first one, we're making, the words saying we're offering all the contents of the universe. So of course, if you know the Buddhist cosmological view of the universe, you imagine those contents that you're offering. Otherwise, just think of all the marvelous things that we use on this planet, that make people happy. You pile them all up. That's the idea. And you're offering to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. And then this is a second prayer, this request to turn the wheel of Dharma, requesting the teachings. And it's very auspicious to offer something before we receive something, isn't it? This is the meaning. So thinking it's all, the students and the center offering, and we're requesting the Buddha, Okay. Prayer's disappeared. Put the prayer back up again.
Yep, all right.
And then somebody here in the Gompa, is that, I don't know who it is, I can only see the body, it might be Nina's head, I'm not sure.
Nina.
So Nina is actually, on behalf of all of us, is offering a mandala. She's offering the kata, then she's going to offer a mandala, a representation of the universe, but she was also, I think, is going to offer representations of enlightened body, speech, and mind, which will be a statue of the Buddha. The speech is a text and mind is represented by a stupa. So this is again really auspicious because it's creating the cause for us to achieve enlightened body, speech, and mind.
Om Sashi Paki Yukshin Cho Samri Rapinchi Nidek Yampati Sange Shindu Mechevadi Yokunanta Shingla Chepashu. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya. Please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued, exactly as they need.
And as we say this mantra, we imagine Buddha very happily accepts our offering. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So now this sets us in the right direction. Two parts to the prayer. The first is for those of us, especially if we've taken refuge in the Buddha, we formally kind of rely upon the Buddha, we're reiterating that reliance on the Buddha, his teachings, and the community of people who practice. And then the second two lines are expressing our reason for sitting here together, our motivation, as the Tibetans would call it. So I'll say it first in English and a few extra words to get clear the meaning, and then we can sing 2 times in Tibetan. So we're saying until we are enlightened, we are going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, the teachings, and the community of practitioners. And then by the virtuous karma that we create by listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha so we can be of benefit to all sentient beings. That's our long-term goal. You can't get a bigger goal than that. Sangye chadang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chenyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drobpa shok sangye chadang soke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chenyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drobpa shok. All right, thank you so much. So now in this second of our modules, 14 modules, we're going to look at how to meditate. So actually, if you're in Tibet, you would not learn this yet. If you're in Tibet in the monasteries, you don't really formally learn this until you start to seriously study. But also automatically, usually you would be participating in all the pujas and all the prayers, you'd be memorizing lots of prayers and practices, but to actually technically learn to meditate, that you learn later. But somehow, because it's so popular in the West, this concept of meditation, it's important, I think, from the beginning that we get it clear. And I think for us in the modern world, we define ourselves as a Buddhist if we sit down on our bottom with our eyes closed and think something. So we think, oh, I'm meditating, you know. It's a very strong word for us. And of course, because of this, we've got there are thousands of variations of ideas of people's views of what meditation is. And that's perfectly fine. Buddha does not have copyright on all this stuff, you know. Anybody can make up their own meditation. There's no law that says you can't. So of course, because when we hear the word meditation, what each one of us does is just naturally bring our definition of it, and assuming that it's common language. But actually everybody in this room, I think, would definition of what meditation is, and indeed what its purpose is. So if we are trying to be Buddhists, and here we're studying Buddhism, let's get clear what Buddhist is. And even among Buddhists, you're going to find so many different reasons, so many variations of what we think it is, you know. So it's very interesting, it's very sobering, really, to look at the Tibetan word that we translate as to meditate. The verb is simply gom. I don't speak Tibetan, but it's gom, apparently. And literally, its translation is very simple. It means to become familiar. That's really surprising. What? What do you mean, do you become familiar? That's completely not what we think at all. So this is the interesting point. You know, when we study the Lam Rim, we learn, when we study the final stages of the Lam Rim, we study the Bodhisattva path, and at the final stages of the Bodhisattva path, which we're going to cover in like the last module, we study the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva, and the last 2 of those, the 5th of those, is literally the technique that's called calm abiding, which is this marvelous concentration meditation technique invented by the Indians well before the Buddha, and which Buddha took when he diverged in his own direction, and which indeed is a central technique in Buddhism, and which finally we absolutely have to cultivate in order to get serious realizations. That's where we learn about it. And so calm abiding is the name given to the very specific technique that is the psychological skill that we develop to concentrate. So generally in the world, when we talk about meditation, we equal that with the word mindfulness, you know. And amongst psychologists now, people are writing books and doing analyses of it, and everyone's giving their own definition. Again, that's okay. But here we're studying the Buddhist view. And we're doing it through the lenses of the Tibetans, of the 1200-year tradition that's there, and even more specifically through the lens of the Gelugpas, which is our lamas, Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe in our organization, which is the Gelugpas, and then from the teachings of our teachers like His Holiness and all the others. This is how we're studying this. So the word to meditate means to become. And that's a totally big surprise to us. So the first meditation technically isn't even that. It doesn't even fit the definition. This karma, there are 2 modes of meditation in Buddhism, essentially 2 methods. One is and this is the 5th and the 6th in the 6 perfections. The 5th one is the cultivation of calm abiding, or the cultivation of concentration, a subtle level of concentration, a level of mind that's not even posited as existing in the modern psychological and neuroscientific views, as we talked in the last module about the mind, because it's the mind that meditates, okay, not the body. We're so addicted to seeing a person with their eyes closed and their legs crossed and got some incense on and the lights are low, and we go, oh, they're meditating. Well, I do not know they are until we see what their mind is doing. They could be thinking about their boyfriend. And indeed, they are becoming familiar with their boyfriend. But what are we trying to become familiar with here is the point. So, okay, the first mode, technically you could argue it's not even concentrate. It's not even, it doesn't fit the definition to become familiar. It's learning to concentrate. It's learning to focus the mind. It's like a technical skill. And technically you could argue in its nature, the actual cultivation of this concentration and mindfulness, these are states of mind, like we talked last module, that are neither virtuous nor non-virtuous in their character, you know, so they're not even Dharma. They're simply a psychological skill, but we need it, utterly. And the real beginning of meditation starts in the 2nd mode. Now, you know, and that's where we get insight, the word insight. The first is called calm abiding. The 2nd is called insight. Calm abiding and each of them is the name given to the end result of the achievement of these skills. But the first one, the one that the world vaguely knows as mindfulness, is simply to learn to concentrate. And so you ask, well, why should we learn to concentrate? What are we trying to do? And do not mystify it, It's a very simple thing. This is the point, the real point, where the familiarization comes in, where the real job of meditating begins to happen, is in the second mode. And the Buddha refers to this as getting insight. Well, in English, it's a lovely word. I've noticed when I go around, because I don't speak any other language, I only speak Australian, so I don't speak French, Italian, Hebrew. When I go to other places, this word insight is not a common word in the modern language. So I know in French, I don't know what it is, but it sounds very kind of mystical. I don't know what it's like in German or in Swiss German, let's say, or in Italian or Spanish. But in English, it's a very delicious word. You look at it, insight. Insight, you see something internally, you think a problem through, and then you go, oh, I get it. I've got a bit of insight into that problem now. So in other words, it's a process of understanding something. Now that's the job of being a Buddhist. So what is it we're trying to get insight into? Well, very simply, this is the broad way. It's a broad, big picture here. The Buddha's telling us that in our mind, as we discussed last module, we have got all these misconceptions, all these delusions, all these neuroses that are the source of our suffering, and which Buddha has found, and this is what's incredible, Buddha has found from his own direct experience are not integral to our being, are not at the core of our being, are not at the core of who we really are, therefore can be removed. So you could argue, then that's the case. If that's the case, putting it in this framework, the job of being a Buddhist is to get insight into how things exist. And how you do that is with a concentrated mind. This is the point, as Lama Yeshe says in his wonderful book Mahamudra, which describes these two modes of meditation in terms of specifically getting insight into emptiness, which is the sixth perfection. There are many things we need to get insight into using that word of the Buddha's. And he wants us not just to get insight into impermanence, he wants us to get insight into impermanence, into the perfect human rebirth, into karma, into compassion, into emptiness, into all the different components of the path. We need to get insight into them. Do not mystify this. Keep it right on the earth, please. If you're studying music, you're trying to get insight into music. You're studying cooking, you're trying to get insight into cooking. Think of it. Do not mystify it. I beg you, this is one of the biggest problems when it comes to Buddhist meditation. People have this word insight, like vipassana. That's the Sanskrit. The fantasies about what it means. And the moment we hear it spiritual and you see someone crossing their legs and closing their eyes, we go, oh, we have the most nonsense ideas of what they're doing. And then we do nonsense things because of it. So it's so unbelievably important to see what it means. So then we can understand the meaning of the Tibetan word to familiarize. You're trying to basically familiarize your mind with virtue and wisdom, which is how things are, and you try to defamiliarize your mind with delusions and nonsense. Think of it very simply. So it's a really powerful process. So the first technique that the world vaguely knows as mindfulness, which is what you think of as meditation, is to develop concentration. Why? Because these delusions are so primordial, so deeply ingrained in our mind that it's not enough to do the unpacking and the unraveling and the getting some insight at only the grosser level of conceptuality, which is the level we function at. So that's why we have to have cultivated this subtle concentration, this samadhi, this calm abiding, which is what you get in the first mode, where you learn to concentrate. You're not trying to familiarize your mind with anything there if you argue with it. You try, well, if you like. So the real meaning of to meditate, gom, to familiarize, is you're familiarizing yourself with in other words, you're habituating. It's called learning something. Think about it. What do you do when you're practicing cooking? You're familiarizing your mind with cooking. You're familiarizing your mind with music. This is the meaning of the word. So here, in this body of knowledge, Buddhist view of the universe, our job is to familiarize our mind with how things exist. Why? Because that's how you become a Buddha. That's how you stop suffering. So it's really practical, but we don't think of it as practical, It's a process of learning. That's it. Until eventually it becomes spontaneous. Until you sit at the piano and your bark just comes out of your mind and out of your fingers. Well, here the same. When you've realized impermanence, realized emptiness, realized bodhicitta, you've totally familiarized your mind with those. So now the tricky, interesting point is this, and this is where we get confused, but it's so practical if we keep referring it to the ordinary world process. You know, if you're studying the Lam Rim, you're going to hear the two kinds of meditation as calm abiding and then as analytical, and we get really thrown. The second mode of meditation, when you read the Lam Rim, is referred to as analytical meditation. Well, technically, what it means is the method that we use based upon accomplishing the first mode of meditation, which is concentration. The method we use to familiarize our mind with impermanence, with karma, with bodhicitta, with emptiness, etc. The method we use is the method of analysis. Now, then we get confused because because we have this very vivid view that meditation equals not thinking. You know, we don't know what it means. We just think you're not supposed to think. Then we hear a term analytical meditation, and it squeezes our poor brains. We don't know what we're listening to. We don't understand it. Well, what do you think this word analysis means? It's just a Greek word for the simple process of thinking about something. You go, oh, I've got to think about it. That's meditation, is it? Yep, that's exactly what meditation is. You're using your brain, your noggin, to get the information you just learned from your teacher that morning, mathematics, cooking, or Buddha Dharma. You sit on your cushion. Of course, you don't do that with your math, but this is the point. You sit on your cushion, you do the first mode of meditation, you get some concentration to the degree that you have any. And then when you've got some focus, you go to the second mode of meditation, and you either remember if you've memorized your classes, or if you've got your notebook, you open your eyes, you look at the words, and then you think it through in focused concentration. And then what happens is in your thinking it through, the penny drops. Oh, I get it. So then your classic in a meditation session on the Lam Rim, and we're going to be discussing all this, or a meditation session coming from Tantra, which we kind of bring in early in our tradition, where we say visualize the Shakyamuni Buddha, visualize Tara. We're going to discuss all these. Then it's the same process. You have some concentration first, then you familiarize yourself with the picture of Tara. Literally in your mind, you're visualizing Tara, just like you would when you're in love with your boyfriend. We all say, oh, I can't meditate, I can't concentrate. Don't be ridiculous. We spend our lives single-pointedly concentrating on the beautiful boyfriend or the ugly boyfriend. Nothing will disturb us, I promise you. We have really good concentration. So here we're trying to use that skill to familiarize our mind with the Buddha, to familiarize our mind with impermanence, familiarize our mind with emptiness or whatever it might be. Why? Because that's what we're trying to do as a Buddhist. It's really simple, but we make it complicated and confusing, you know. And that's because the mind is such a powerful thing. When we really start to study what it's like, the Buddha's view, and especially these subtler levels, and especially the fact that our mind has come from countless past lives, and the fascinating point that the Buddhist view makes, that there's not a single thing that any being has ever experienced through their five senses or with their mind that goes astray. Everything is stored in our mind from our beginningless experiences. That's pretty shocking. So no wonder when you close your eyes and and then something mystical weird happens. I mean, people, Lama Yeshe says, well, people start to meditate and end up in a psychiatric hospital because we don't know about our mind. We haven't studied it. We've got no idea what we're doing. We can't distinguish between delusions and virtue. Then we haven't got a clue. We mystify. People go nuts when they meditate. Or let's say what happens is, I know many examples of people who must have been from some past karma where they have practiced some spiritual path. And then you sit down to concentrate and your mind kind of is triggered and all these incredible visions and bliss and different things rise up. People go crazy, or people become like junkies. I remember one woman who'd never done any meditation came to one center I was in Australia. She sat down and we happened to be doing a Tara meditation. Well, she got incredible bliss. Well, she thought, I mean, that's what people think in the West, that a meditation session, you're supposed to get bliss. Oh, I had a spiritual experience. No, you didn't. You just felt good. That's not spiritual. Go and have sex if you want, bliss is much easier. Or have a nice cake. But these people who got some past karma with meditating, have some blissful experience, confuse it with spiritual because their eyes are closed and their legs are crossed. I mean, we're so ridiculous. And then they get completely neurotic and become like a special, junkies. This woman couldn't wait to sit down again to get more bliss. That is not the point. It's like the ideas we have in the West are so bizarre, spiritual experiences we talk about. I mean, it's just utter nonsense. I'm not trying to be, I am being blunt. What can I do? It's my nature. So what you're trying to do is get concentration. Why? So you can stabilize this ridiculous berserk mind. So you have enough, focus, so you can start to think something through, analyze something reasonably enough that it stays in your mind, and then at some point it triggers an insight. You do that. We can see that with teachings, even listening to teachings, even myself talking. Something goes, oh, I get it myself by hearing it. That's an insight. But there's just levels of insights until eventually you've perfected the insights where they're now genuine realizations. So so in other words, there's two modes of meditation. This process of getting concentration and then familiarizing your mind with virtue and the teachings is exactly the process we use to learn to play the violin or to cook, make cakes, or to do anything else. It's just that we don't call it meditation. We don't use these Indian or these Tibetan terms, So because of that, we mystify it, because it's called spiritual. I mean, we're so ridiculous, I tell you. And then we have all these misconceptions. We think, one of the commonest misconceptions about quote unquote meditation is you've got to stop your thoughts. This is the strongest, the thing that most people will say. You're supposed to stop the thoughts, I mean, the ideas are just so cliched, so unhelpful. So mainly what I'm talking about is what meditation is not, which is a good start, So first of all, it's important you read the course notes you've got from Sangi Kadro. She's the author of How to Meditate, which is a very popular book published by Wisdom Publications. And she's the author, and she goes through it all properly. And I just say things that she might not be saying, and I said lots of things she's saying that I'm not saying. So it's important you read her notes, her course notes, because they're very thorough. But I'm trying to express to us, trying to get past all the cliches, all the misconceptions, all the nonsense, And of course, the other biggest misconception when we try to do some concentration meditation is, oh, I can't concentrate. My thoughts are so busy. Oh, I can't do it. I mean, the point is, when we start to learn the mind, which we did, the first module, and we only just skimmed the surface, but the more we learn about the mind and how it functions, and the more we learn about how delusions function and how they run the show at the moment, and we're going to go more into that into the samsara and nirvana module, and indeed in the karma module, then we learn that our minds at the moment are driven, even if we're good people. We've got good past habits, bringing it from past karma, but our minds are uncontrolled. They're undisciplined. And there's no method, I think, in our modern psychological or neuroscientific models for getting concentration, or for steadying the mind, except to take a drug, maybe, I'm not sure. So the biggest stumbling block for us, just even intellectually, is our misconception that somehow my mind is ridiculous and it's berserk and I can't stop the thinking, therefore I can't meditate. But that's like saying, well, you learn to go to ride a bike and you climb on the bike on the left side and you fall off on the right side and you say, oh, mummy, I tried to ride a bike, but I couldn't do it. Well, guess what, honey? Try again. How about more than once? In fact, that's the point about meditation. But we're also neurotic and also negative about ourselves. Oh, I can't meditate. Oh, I can't sit still. I can't do this. I can't do that. So we sort of assume already we're failures. But this is the whole point. Why are you going to learn to concentrate? Is because you can't concentrate. That's why you're learning it. So we have to have a little bit of patience, a little bit of humility, a little bit of enthusiasm, and a bit of perseverance, please. Okay, I'm just making general points here, okay? So, okay, if the real thing is to familiarize your mind with something, then how can you familiarize your mind with cooking if you haven't learned the theories? How can you familiarize your mind with math if you haven't been to the class to listen to the intellectual concept? How can you familiarize your mind with 1 + 1 is 2 if you haven't heard the words 1 + 1 is 2? That's where this is the classic approach. You first have to, there's 3 levels they talk about, levels of realizations, levels of insight, if you like, levels of even becoming familiar. The first level is obviously to listen. You have to listen to the theory first. Then the second one is, and that's what we're doing in this class, we're listening, and I'm listening too, I promise. And the second one is, even as we're doing it, we're trying to think it through. We're trying to put the bits, we're trying to put the bits together, aren't we? We're trying to make sense of the words. So that's first listening, and then we think about it, trying to make sense of it intellectually. And then you deepen that in what's called formal meditation. You deepen that, and when you get, that's where you get, and you deepen it, and you, in the formal meditation, using this process, you listen, think about it, and then it sinks in as you start to do it. It's kind of common sense. Like, again, as I say, it's how we learn everything. You listen first, you think it through to make it coherent intellectually, and then you taste it. And that's the meaning. That's usually the real meaning of the meditate. You meditate on it. You get the taste of it. You get the insight into it. But the process is analysis. In this particular approach, the process of familiarizing yourself with all the teachings in the Buddhist path to enlightenment. The process here is analysis, is thinking it through. Now, the same second, like I said before, the tantric practices of visualizing. It's exactly the same two modes of meditation are involved. The difference is it's visual. You're still using your mind. If you think about it, it's still analysis. You're using your mind, but it's kind of painting a picture. So then most of us also say, well, I can't visualize. Well, most people can't have a very vivid visualization. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But again, like in our daily life, this is what we're doing all the time. Think about this. You think about person you don't like. You think about the ice cream. You think about what you did last week. You think about what you're going to do. It's all technically visualization. Don't think it's not. That's just the way the mind works. All these meditations are doing is using the skill of the human mind, how we use it for samsara. And Buddha's getting us to use it to achieve nirvana. That's all. Something different. It's the same process we use for everything. We're just trying to change what we think, what we familiarize our minds with. I mean, most of the time we concentrate on delusions. We concentrate on the boyfriend. We concentrate on the person we can't stand. We concentrate on the food. We analyze it. We think it through. We familiarize our mind deeply with all of those things. And we're basically growing more delusions. That's how our minds work. We're using that same technical skills to familiarize ourselves with, how things exist. That's what spiritual means, So generally speaking, like I said, there are two modes of meditation: concentration, and then the second mode, which is the aim is to get concentration, and the second one is the aim is to get insight. The general process, the general method we use to get insight into the philosophical views of the Buddha's view of the universe is the method of analysis. That's why the Tibetans talk about analytical meditation, as opposed to concentration meditation, which is where you don't analyze. And we're going to be discussing all these in detail and doing them, where you learn to focus the mind, not be engaged in thinking. You can't stop the thoughts, but you aim to not engage in the thinking. And then the second one is on the basis of that concentration to whatever degree you've got it, like in one session, just, you'd go home and you've done your class on karma, you'd go home, you'd sit down in your room on your cushion, you'd get some concentration. And then when you got some semblance of focus according to your capacity, then you go to the second mode and you take the information either from your notebook or in your mind, if you memorized it in your class that day, and you literally think it through. Now, if you read in the Tibetan literature, the really perfect way to do analytical meditation, it demands really very strong logic, because that's the general point. What we're trying to do, broadly speaking, in our analysis is become familiar with karma. Means you're learning the words. It's like you study, you do your homework, you learn the words, you write it down. You do your homework, you learn the words, you write down the theories, but yourself, then you start to really apply those theories in your daily life. So you're thinking it through all the time. That's the process of familiarization at an ordinary level. But in your meditation, you're thinking it through until some feeling for it happens, which is what insight means. But you're also using logic to argue with the current views deep in our bones, which are the exact opposite of karma. Karma is a shock in the beginning because we have an assumption that I didn't ask to get born. We have an assumption that mummy and daddy made me. We have an assumption that God made me. We have an assumption that we're an innocent victim. We have an assumption that things happen for no logical reason. They're the philosophy that we hold in our mind at the moment, so deeply we don't even think it's a philosophy. So when you familiarize yourself in concentration meditation with the thought about karma, what you're doing is you're giving yourself a panic attack in a way. You're thinking about what Buddha says, and it's arguing with what you think right now, and you're trying to replace your views, because you've chosen to, with the Buddha's views. And when you've got a direct experience of that, then karma is natural to you, and that's the way you see the world now. Then you've got your visualization techniques, which are from Tantra. And even though we don't have initiation, there are many of those practices that we, in the Tibetan tradition, we all learn from the very beginning, which is marvelous because people love these meditations, you know. So we visualize Tara, we visualize Shakyamuni Buddha, we visualize all kinds. And so it's important, even at this point, in this early stages of this modules, that we learn a bit about the tantric understanding of what the Buddha is, you know. So we'll discuss all these as well. And there's other kinds of meditations we do that are sort of like preparatory. There's one that's we're going to do all these. We're going to, you know, or you do them together, or I don't know what's going to happen. I suppose I should lead some, shouldn't I? It's my job, isn't it? There's one that we do that often, you know, for example, Lama Yeshe talks about this in his Mahamudra book. It's one that's done before you do another practice, because it's working with the subtler winds in the body, and it's stabilizing your mind and stabilizing your physical energies. And it's called the nine round breathing meditation. So all these are lovely little techniques that really are just useful to do, you know. So, and I think the other thing in general, the other point is this, that I think because we're creatures of habit, and it's really helpful to have even a 10-minute morning practice and a 10-minute evening practice before you even start to do, you know, when you start practicing in more depth and start studying, and you take empowerments and you have commitments, and sometimes you can have hours of practice every day. But even at the beginning, it helps our mind, because we feel so chaotic. It's really helpful to us to have a stable morning and evening practice. It kind of grounds us. For me, I think of it as two bookends for the day, you know. You do something in the morning before you start the day, and that can include reading some prayers. That can include, you know, doing a meditation. It can, all kinds, you know, can do that. Or it can include reading something or doing a meditation, and it's something that we feel like we've done something, and that's very helpful for our minds. We need that, you know. We need that. And then you finish the day. And of course, in our tradition, very strongly, as Lama Zopa says, we're insane not to do this practice every day. Once we've learned about karma, to do the four opponent powers, the purification practice. So all of these are done in the framework of what's labeled meditation. Familiarizing your mind. So it does help us have it more formal, because we are creatures of habit, and it's helpful. I mean, if you're really working on your mind, you're doing it 24 hours a day, on the toilet, behind the wheel, talking to your boyfriend. You are familiarizing your mind. But we need the formal practice. It helps us feel like we've achieved something. We all need that, you know. We need some and we need the discipline. I mean, it's very good for us to have discipline. Otherwise, how can you learn anything, you know? So it's just general talk, okay, before we just start getting specific. But before I go further, are there any kinds of questions? Any questions? We're going to start to go to detail of different techniques now, okay? But ask me questions. And if you have any questions right now, just to clarify.
Good. If anyone has any question, please feel free to raise your hand. You can also type a question in the chat box. Turn your mic on, be bold, raise a physical hand.
If there's no questions, it's okay.
Let's see here.
I have a question.
Thank you, Nina. Hello, Nina.
Hello.
Talk to me.
Hey. I'm rather new to Buddhism, and it's the first time now that I've heard that you can actually just find some concentration and then let's just think about your course notes. Is this something that you would recommend, or is it better as a beginner to start with these ready-made meditations?
No, I think that's where it is important. I mean, the ready-made, that's a good point, Nina. The ready-made meditations, like we can do the 9-round breathing. We can do a concentration technique. We can do the Tara technique. We can do this, you know, all of these we can do. But really, the broader usage of this process of meditation, if you're studying if you're really seriously committed to being a Buddhist, you'd listen to the teachings, you'd go home, and effectively, as we'd say in daily life, you'd do your homework. That's what so what do you think you're doing when you do your homework? You're familiarizing your mind with the study material, aren't you? So then you can, I mean, it's really logical, isn't it, Nina? That's technically how you would do the 2 modes of meditation at the end of the day. You'd go home, you've done your class, like this class, and this is the classic way they do it in the monasteries, you know, after you've done the class, and they learn, since they're little children in the Tibetan system, they learn to memorize. They're incredible, you know, they've got such brilliant minds. And you'd go home, you'd sit down in your concentration, like you could do this after your class, Nina. You'd sit down, and if you've learned concentration meditation, you should know the technique. You need to learn the technicalities of it. You'd sit down and do your concentration, steady your mind. Then you'd go to the second mode, and you'd take whatever, it's like doing your homework. You'd take whatever you learned in this class. Okay, it's very general talk, but maybe you've taken notes, maybe you've remembered it. You'd think it through. You just go through the notes, and maybe at some point you read something. And because the stuff that we're talking about now is kind of very simple, but when it comes to more detailed stuff, you might read a paragraph, and then you close your eyes with your focus, and you kind of try to taste it. You'd think it through. It's just a more formal way of doing your homework. And that's the process of the 2 modes of meditation. Of course, to really do it properly, it would be quite sophisticated the way you do it. But that's the general principle, Nina. It's not something mystical. And the key addition here, I mean, when we learn at school, we learn in college and everything, we don't learn concentration techniques. This is the addition here. This is the brilliant thing that Buddha adds to it. But of course, so concentration itself is absolutely marvelous, but that takes a lot of effort to get concentration. People go off for years just to get concentration. So you can really develop a refined level of mind to then utilize it very quickly to familiarize yourself, so you get the so-called realizations of these different things. So yes, it is good to have the formal little techniques that are created. It makes sense to have those. But when you understand the bigger meaning, you can make up your own meditation every day. It's not illogical, you understand?
And then, does it make sense to start with the concentration meditation to develop that first, or?
You see, if you do that, that's like you need to give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Give up everything. Go to the mountains for several years, and you go crazy because you're not ready. So we've got to do it bit by bit. And the mind is just not ready to do that. It's impossible. That's like sort of thinking you're going to perfect your body to be so brilliant before you begin to play tennis. You'll be 10 years making your body perfect, but you do a little bit of work on your body, then you play a bit of tennis, and you keep improving both aspects. You get my point? You've got to do both, darling. Some people absolutely choose to go off to get concentration, but that's an interesting point. I always quote this example. One of our students and one of our teachers, the Swiss monk, Venerable Rene, and I hope have you had him there in Luxem? I'm so happy. Wonderful. So he's been around for 45 years, and he's since almost from the beginning, he started to seriously study. He became a monk, and then eventually he went to our center near Spain, up in the mountains in the Sierra Nevada near Granada, and he did a 2.5-year concentration meditation retreat. And I interviewed him in our magazine back in 95 in Mandela, and it was really fascinating. And he said there was no way he could have been ready just to go off to the mountains to do concentration meditation without first having become a monk, lived in years and years of discipline and vows, done lots and lots of practice, lots and lots of teachings, and lots of other meditations. That was what prepared his mind to be ready to go to the mountains for 2.5 years to get concentration. You see my point, Nina? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, and some of us have that connection. Some from the very beginning, people will go off to, but you can't put concentration meditation in isolation from the whole entire path. You know, there's a lot. Yeah, that's very clear. But yes, it's really helpful to do the already constructed little techniques. It's really good to do that because it gives us some courage, you know. Do you understand, Nina?
Yeah.
Thank you, darling. Thank you very much. Yes, Michelle.
So there are a lot of topics you can analyze in Buddhism. So my question is it better to focus on one topic for a while, well, let's say a few weeks, or is it better to mix it, like analyze day per day?
I understand. That's a very interesting question. You know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche recommends when he gives people their practices, people write to Rinpoche and they get their life practice, and they're always a bit shocked because it's so much for the rest of their life. And he gives them the different you know, he will emphasize for certain people, I want you to do 3 months of the first stages of the Lam Rim, and then you do another 6 months of meditating on the second scope, and then another 3 months of meditating on the third one. So it can be that way. You can definitely choose to focus more on one section of the path than another, depending on your own. It's a bit like if you know, you're learning, you go to the gym where you're learning to develop your body, you've got more emphasis on the calf muscles, more emphasis on the shoulder. So it's up to what's best for your mind. So that can easily be, Michelle, for sure. But in the end, we need to familiarize with all of it. Absolutely. There's no question. But it depends on your mind, what you need best, you know. Maybe you need a lot of, somebody might know they need to do a lot of the meditations on compassion. Some people got to do a lot of meditations on renunciation. It depends on where you're at.
All right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
And
Yes.
one
Hello. Wolfgang is there. Hello, Wolfgang. How's everything, Wolfgang? You
Hello.
well?
Thank you, Rubina.
Good.
As I understand it, in the Pali tradition and in the Japanese Zen tradition, they just focus on letting go. They just say,
well, I think it's a term. No, I think, Wolfgang, that's a term absolutely that we can use, but that's Mahamudra. That's Dzogchen. Absolutely, exactly the same.
So is that not a third? Next to
no, it's still concentration. It's a method of concentration.
It's a method of
concentration. It's a different way of emphasizing it. So Mahamudra is exactly that. If you read Lama Yeshe's book, he's exactly saying it's learning to let go. You're focusing the mind, but you're learning not to, you know, they call it in Mahamudra focusing on the mind, but you know, the Dzogchens might say it in a different way. So it's another method for getting clarity, another method. And when you've got that, yeah, you could argue you've got a very focused mind, absolutely. And actually, it's a more sophisticated. If you're doing it properly, certainly the Mahamudra one. I mean, I can't say much about Zen. I haven't done it. I've only heard words about it, you know. And but that absolutely is another method of describing. But it is still there's all meditations in Buddhism would fit into these two. There's no other kind of structure. You'd argue if it's valid meditation from the Buddhist point of view.
So also the tantric meditation is not a meditation.
Sorry, start again. Sorry, I missed your words.
The tantric meditation is not a complete separate third path.
No, it's not exactly. It's exactly the same using the two modes. You'd go home, you'd sit down, you get some concentration, then you go to the second mode, so-called analysis, but your analysis is visual. You have the image of Amitabha, for example, and you would visualize Amitabha, and with the more your focus, the more clear your visualization. And then you would get, okay, it's a different method of getting insight, but there's then you'd use mantra and different methods to familiarize your mind more deeply with your own Buddha nature. It's exactly the same modes of meditation, Wolfgang.
Okay, thank
you.
You
Understand?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
And Carol, did you have a question? I saw your hand earlier.
Hello, Carol.
Thank you, Rubina. Thank you, Venerable Dear One.
Good.
Yeah, I think my answer was incorporated in Wolfgang's answer too. I was asking about mantra in the with the use. Can you explain the use when we
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay. You see, in general, you could say all of meditation is only familiarization. It's all just different approaches to familiarizing your mind with finally your Buddha nature. Everything leads to that. It's all of it is methods to help you become a Buddha. If it's not that, then it's not meditation. You can put it that way. So mantra is the same. You can do, you can get your concentration. You go to the second mode and you're just going to imagine Chenrezig, and then you meditate just by reciting the mantra. And see, the point of all of this, the point is, the more scattered our mind is, the more wandering off into the la-la land that our mind is, we can't familiarize our mind with anything. So the concentration is like an underpinning thing. It's the skill, the technique that you use for success in the second mode, to visualize, say mantra, read words, let go, see the nature of your mind, all of whatever it is, all of it is for the same purpose. You're familiarizing your mind with, say it's Chenrezig mantra, What do you think you're doing by saying Om Mani Padme Hum? By buying into the meaning of Om Mani Padme Hum, you're familiarizing your mind with compassion. You say the wisdom mantra, you're familiarizing your mind with Manjushri's mantra. You're familiarizing your mind with wisdom. It's the same every time, whatever it is. You know?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Any other questions out there? I don't think. Okay.
All right. Okay, then now.
Brian.
Yes,
Sorry.
Brian. Hello,
Okay.
Brian. Hello, my dear. Talk to me, dear.
Good morning, Venerable.
Good morning, Brian.
You had mentioned just before about, doing readings and prayers in the morning followed by meditation. I've been doing a lot of readings. Sometimes because of time, I don't have time to get around to meditation.
Sure.
And obviously I would like to do both. Should I maybe focus more on meditating right now and not do so many readings in the morning and prayers?
No, you see, Brian, because technically, I'm not trying to be kind of tricky here, but technically, if you're reading something, surely you are taking it in, aren't you? You're taking the meaning into your, well, honey, that is familiarization. So technically that is a meditation session. Don't think it's not,
Yeah.
You understand my point? If you're just reading it and then not noticing what you're reading, then you're wasting your time. It's like anything. So you are doing that. But also, it depends on the person. Some people like to visualize Tara. They like to do visualization meditation, for example. But what you're doing is a classic analytical meditation, in a very informal way. We just don't think of it as being meditation. It doesn't look like it because we've got a too strict or too narrow a definition of the word meditation. But technically, that is the process that you're doing. You know yourself, if there's no focus, if your mind is really scattered, nothing goes in. So that's why concentration is a fundamental necessity. It's got its own amazing benefits, but from the Buddhist point of view, it's simply the tool that we use. The real work is in the second mode. Do you understand, Brian?
Yeah, and I do enjoy the readings and the present, and I do feel like I've accomplished something.
This is perfect. You're doing absolutely perfectly.
Okay.
Nothing wrong. It's perfect, Brian.
Wonderful.
Really and truly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to get to here, there are, yes, like Nina's point, there are structured little techniques that have already been constructed that come from the lineage, that have been set up. Like you go to play tennis and you learn little skills and you do your little something skill. You did your backhand skill today. You did your this, your that, but all of it's playing tennis. Well, here, all of this is meditation. It helps us in the beginning, Nina's point, to do the formal ones because they're already been done, but when you understand, what I'm trying to get across is the bigger meaning of these words. And so Brian's point is a good point. He's actually meditating. If it means familiarizing his mind, well, good Lord, if he's reading Buddha's teachings, he is literally familiarizing his mind with those things. And at some point, we all know, even just listening like right now, something can trigger. Oh, I get that. That's exactly the point. Just there are more formal ways of doing these things, that's all. But don't think this process of being relaxed and reading a book is not it's not technically meditation. It is. I'm trying to get the broader meaning clear to us because we have a very vivid kind of picture of meditation as something with your eyes closed and your legs crossed. And that's so cliched. So obviously your eyes, if you really want good concentration, it does help to have your eyes closed because we get distracted. And what we're trying to do is not be distracted, obviously. But, it's not, doesn't follow having your eyes closed and your legs crossed. It doesn't define yourself as being a meditator. That's clear. Okay, so let's, what time is it? 10 to have half an hour or something.
About 10 minutes till.
Yeah. So we started what time? Oh, we've got another 40 minutes, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Yes.
Fine. Okay, so let's now talk about the calm abiding technique, the concentration technique. Because this is learning this skill, understanding it properly is the basis of developing the skill to do the second mode, which is where the real work happens. It's so kind of obvious. The analogy would be playing tennis. If your body isn't conducive, no matter how much you try to do backhands and forehands and run around the court, you can't do a damn thing. The point of it is to, so what do you do in the first mode? You've got to prime your body to be ready to play tennis. The point is to play tennis. to get insight into tennis, but your body's got to be prepared. So concentration is a brilliant skill that we need to learn to cultivate. But I want to talk about in another way here as well, that the technical reason to get concentration, to whatever degree you get it, is because your mind is then more focused. And then whatever you do in the second mode, whether it's Brian sitting there relaxed in his chair doing his readings, the more focused his mind is, it's sort of obvious, the more deeply those words will go into his heart. It's really obvious that concentration is crucial. If you can't, like the classic one will be, that's where you have to have your own little place to sit. You have your own, and it's really helpful. This is another thing, how you set up a daily practice. I think one of the modules is this, but we can mention this here. Because we're creatures of habit, it really helps us to have a little place where you meditate. I mean, we have a place where we go to the toilet. We have a place where we sleep, a place where we eat, a place where we watch. Maybe sometimes we join those, but it helps that you label a place your meditation place. It's really good for your mind to have a little spot, have your little altar. It's your own place, your own cushion, your own chair, and it builds up this energy. It's very important. In fact, when they do long, serious retreats, tantric retreats, you're not supposed to move your cushion. If you're in 10-year retreat, your cushion stays right there. And you build up this powerful it's kind of like the Buddha, when he sat under the tree, finally, after all his years and years of preparation and hard work, he decided, I will not move from this place. So this is kind of indestructible determination, It's a symbolic of that, I think. So it helps to have a place. So what I'm getting at here, what was I getting at? Some other point. I can't remember now the point. I went off somewhere. Never mind. Let's talk about then. Okay, yes. So the classic, the actual reason, the proper reason for getting concentration is so that you can have a focused mind, and you can go to the second mode. And with Brian, for example, he can, as he reads those words, he tastes the meaning. That's an insight, people. That's an insight. That's what it means. Just because he's not cross-legged with his eyes closed, it's so clear. The actual technical reason to have calm abiding. So calm abiding, or shamatha in Sanskrit, is the name given to the technique of getting this samadhi, this concentration, accessing this subtler level of mind that, as I always point out, that we don't even posit as existing in the modern psychological systems, So that's what it's called, and it's the name given to the end result. That's the thing. So, like I said to Nina, if you really want to get that, like with Venerable Renee, he went off, he did lots and lots of work beforehand. Talk about priming your body ready to start playing tennis. He primed his mind for years with study and practice and living in vows before he was ready to go to the mountains to get concentration. And the concentration technique in the texts is classically presented in terms of 9 stages of cultivation. And he said he maybe touched on the 5th of the 9 in 2.5 years. So it really shows it's a long-term job, So the thing is, most of us won't get that, and don't be disappointed. It's like, you want to be like Federer. I'm sorry, you can't do that just by doing an hour a day. You've got to devote your entire life to tennis, don't you? We know that. 8 hours, 10 hours a day for years on end, then you'll be like Federer. So if you want to get concentration, you've got to be like Venerable Renee, But most of us can use it in our daily life, nevertheless. But this is the point here I'm trying to get at. There's this concentration, its actual technical purpose is to refine the mind so it's more capable of internalizing the information. There's no question. But most of us, because of our daily lives, because of the enormous amount of information in our heads every day, and all our responsibilities and our children and mortgages and dogs and wives and husbands and God knows what, we're busy doing all these other things, So we do a little bit. That's why having a formal practice in the morning, even as 5 minutes, it's good, and something in the end of the day, that's good, slowly. So the other thing is, so the point I'm trying to get at here now, the technical reason to have concentration is so you do excellent insight meditation. That's the only point. But I would say this, and this is really vital to understand. Most of us won't get concentration. Look how much it needs, the energy and the work to get it, unless you've got very strong blessings from having done it in a past life, But doesn't mean there's no benefit. And this does not mean that because you don't have concentration, you can't do anything. That's too dramatic. It's too extreme to think that. So I would say this is one of the most powerful things for all of us in our daily lives, that the major benefit of even just doing 5 minutes of concentration, 5 minutes of letting go, whatever you want to call it, whatever method you use, Mahamudra, whatever it is, even the benefit is tremendous, and it's not what we think. We are obsessed with thinking maybe that I've got to get concentration. Oh, I had a terrible session this morning. My mind was all over the place. I couldn't concentrate. So we assume we failed. We're missing the point completely. Okay, another way of talking about what you're trying to do being a Buddhist, which is how I quote all the time Lama Yeshe, is to be your own therapist. Your job is to become intimately familiar with the workings of your own mind, and you don't just do that on your cushion. You practice on your cushion, but then the rest of the day, that's your job. You've got to be familiar with your own mind. This is the whole point of being a Buddhist. Okay, you've got, if you're like Venerable Renee in the mountains, which he's doing 24 hours a day, fine. But most of us, we're not going to be like that. We're going to be, so, but what we have to do is learn the skill to listen to what the hell is going on in our mind. Because that's our job. We've got to, and then what do we got to do? Distinguish between the deluded thoughts, the attachment, the anger, the jealousy, the resentment, the not fair, poor me. Distinguish between that and the positive states of mind, and learn to develop our mind, to mold our mind, as Lama Zopa puts it, into the shape of a whatever we like. So he would try to mold our mind to the shape of a Buddha's mind. So that's our day-to-day job, and we need to do that 24 hours a day as much as we can. So the skill that we can bring from even doing 5 minutes of concentration in the morning, so is that so for 5 minutes, what are you doing? Think of it this way. What are you doing for that 5 minutes? You're making tremendous effort to stay focused. Okay, say it in the Mahamudra way. Lama puts it a different way, but effectively it's the same. Because the consequence of that, when you really are developed, is that your mind will steady down. But for most of us, it won't. But don't think you're not successful. So the real benefit from practicing with your eyes closed, sitting in a formal position, doing a nice little practice, having a little place, having your cushion, it all helps. And you do your 5 minutes of concentration. You decide you're going to concentrate on the breath, and we're going to discuss this. And for 5 minutes, you really do the job properly. I'm going to describe exactly how you do it. And you make an effort. You might completely fail in terms of having concentration. Of course you will. But this is the point. What is the benefit is that for 5 minutes, you've been consciously not following every thought. You've been consciously not being mindless. You're being totally mindful. That means you're becoming, for that 5 minutes, even when your mind is berserk, you can't help but hear all those crazy thoughts. And that is brilliant. If you have to be your own therapist, if you have to learn to become familiar with what the hell is going on in your mind so you can program it, then you've got to know what's going on in your mind. And that's what you learn. That's the skill you get from watching your breath for 5 minutes. You mightn't get much concentration. It doesn't matter. You listen, you notice your thoughts. And this is what they say in the texts. In the classic texts, as I said, this concentration technique is described in terms of 9 stages of developing ever more subtlety. And we'll go through this. And all they say in the text that a sign of success at the first of the 9 stages is that you think your mind is more berserk. Okay, they don't say to berserk in Tibetan, but get my point. We think our mind is worse, but this is the point. Your mind is not worse. It's just that you've now suddenly started to notice it. And that's the brilliance. That's what we have to learn to do. So our assumption that I failed in my meditation because my thoughts didn't stop is mistaken. If you have the ability to concentrate, and if you have practiced, and you can get focused, and you can still the conceptuality, brilliant. I'm so happy for you. But don't think that you don't succeed until then, because we have to see the thoughts, because that's what's happening throughout your day. You can't have no thoughts during the day. You'll kill yourself and you'll kill other people because you're not focusing. You've got to have conceptuality. We live at the level of conceptuality. So what we have to do is become familiar with the chaos in here. And this is not comfortable. So that's why we think we've failed. No, you didn't fail. Be happy that you're seeing your crazy mind, and that you bring that skill. In other words, for 5 minutes, you've attempted. Normally in the day, we're absorbed like this. our thoughts and ourselves, there's no distinction. We are not conscious 90% of the day. It's only when the thoughts arise really as powerful emotions that we notice our thoughts. And now what we're doing for that 5 minutes is we're like stepping out of our head and attempting to focus on one thing. You're making a great effort to do that. You're standing back, so then you can't help but hear your thoughts. It's a shock to us to see how much is there, but that's what we should be happy about. So you bring that skill of stepping out of your head into your daily life. Whereas once you'd be doing the dishes, and then Wolfgang's making me crazy and the kids are all shouting. And then suddenly my anger vomits out my mouth. And I didn't even notice I was angry because I hadn't been paying attention. But now, from the habit of doing a simple concentration technique in the morning, where you step out of your head for 5 minutes, super concentrated, trying to focus, I'm now doing the dishes, I'm noticing the thoughts and I'm catching them before they vomit out the mouth, before they're expressed as anger to Wolfgang, That's the benefit. It's not necessarily said like that in the text, but that's the point. That's how it's going to be a great benefit for all of us. We need to see our minds. We need to see and become intimately familiar with the chaos in here. And then that's when we learn the Buddhist model of the mind, and we learn all the other things to think about. We start to channel and to harness all that crazy thinking and turn it into the thinking of a Buddha. Are we communicating, people? I hope so. So let's just talk about then what's involved in doing a concentration technique, what a correct meditation session would look like. So basically, when we learned in the first module, we didn't go very deeply into it, we learned that there are these various, as they call them, mental factors. We'd simply call them thoughts. It's very simple. And we know there are thousands of thoughts. There are so many thoughts that they all seem like one big lump of emotion, don't they? We can't articulate second by second each tiny thought. But that's why, again, we need concentration. The more concentration you've got that you utilize in your meditation, naturally you utilize that concentration in your daily life. It's obvious. You don't forget it. So you become more and more intimately familiar with the thought processes. So you can distinguish between the neuroses and the virtues. That's the day-to-day job of being a Buddhist. So there are various states of mind that play a role in this meditation technique. And like we discussed last module, these are called I call these the mechanics of the mind. So the two major ones, the first major one we're trying to cultivate is what they call mindfulness. So, of course, as I've been saying, there are so many definitions of that word, but it's just one of the many parts of our mind that the first stages of meditation we're trying to cultivate. And then the subtle level, the development of mindfulness, which is simply defined as the ability, it's technically, broadly, simply speaking, it's the ability to not forget what you're doing. But technically how it functions is, mindfulness is the constant bringing, second by second, bringing back to the thing you're focusing on, bringing your mind back to it and not losing it, So it's really called not forgetfulness. And of course, at the moment, we've got total forgetfulness. You sit down to watch your breath, and in 5 seconds, you're thinking about your boyfriend. In 3 seconds, you're thinking about the food or the person you're angry with. We know that. So concentration then, so the first one we're trying to cultivate at the first stages of these 9, we're trying to get really strong, cultivate strong mindfulness, which is the ability to not forget what you're doing second by second by second. And that leads to the development of a subtler state called concentration. And at a certain point in these 9 stages, you've perfected your mindfulness, and then you have now to use other techniques to employ to get the concentration. And so it's stages and stages and stages of subtlety of the development of these different parts of our mind. Now, the major 2 problems in meditate, the major 2 problems in our mind now that are the 2 obstacles to having any concentration whatsoever is the tendency of the mind, on the one hand, to be completely berserk. They call it excitement. Sounds very polite. Berserk is a better word. Your mind is uncontrolled. We are familiar with this, That's the one first huge obstacle. The other extreme obstacle is the tendency of the mind to space out or to be dull. So and this is me talking very casually now. Look at the way we are in our daily lives, even emotionally. This excitement is attachment energy. So attachment is multifaceted. Attachment has the energy of dissatisfaction. It also has the proactive energy of always wanting something more. So it's always looking forward to something. It always it's conceptuality. It's thinking about something all the time. Delicious, you know. So excitement is an aspect of attachment mind, which is out of control. I mean, you think of our daily lives, we're never stopping, thinking in the past, thinking into the future. What will I do now? I'll do this, now I'll do that, all the time. Think. This uncontrolled, berserk, unstable part of the mind, this is the excitement. So it's the exact opposite of a concentration, isn't it? So we're learning in concentration and meditation to still that one. Now, that then would lead to the other extreme. When you begin to still the mind, you know, like in your own 5-minute session, then the other extreme problem can kick in and you space out. You become completely dull. So we've got these two extremes. And I think even emotionally in daily life, think about it. When your mind is really perky and you're on the case, got all your jobs to do, you've got busy mind. And you think about this, there's a quality there that's excellent, that we absolutely need in meditation, but without the excitement. And that's this sharpness. You know, when you're really busy doing many jobs, your mind is sharp as a needle. So this excitement energy has got this, and this is my words for it, okay? It's like when you're on the case doing all your jobs done, you're ticking off all your jobs, you're going here, you're going there, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're staying focused, your mind is really as you're sharp as a needle. So in concentration and meditation, we're trying to retain that sharpness, but not the berserkness. So usually we can't have the sharpness without the berserkness, because what happens even emotionally, when you collapse emotionally, what do you become? Is deeply depressed, isn't it? That's like an emotional component, an emotional way that dullness is. You sink into misery, don't you? You're either all berserk and excited and happy and getting things done, which is berserk attachment energy, or you're completely depressed. I'm just talking very casually here. These are like the emotional components, busy and excited and all optimistic. And there's a sharpness there, and then you're dull and depressed, but the dullness has got also a quality of being very still. Think about this. So in concentration meditation, the two extreme obstacles, the whole of the 9 stages is involved in going against, is these two extremes. So we've either berserk mind, or if you start to get concentrated, if you're not watching it carefully, the danger is you will sink into dullness and you'll even go to sleep. This is the commonest thing in meditation. So this is also one of the dangers. Some people, it seems, from my experience, have an ability to sit and be very, very comfortable in their cross-legged position. And they can sit there very quietly for a long time. And basically, they feel very comfortable, but they think that is concentration. No, that is dullness. It's a sinking, and it's a very comfortable feeling. One of the biggest misconceptions, Lama says, is confusing that dullness, which is very comfortable, very quiet, it's not berserk, with concentration. It's not concentration. And that's one of the biggest dangers. So concentration, then, this is my words for it, okay, is when you've got concentration to some degree, the mind is as sharp as a needle, but there's no excitement. It's not berserk. You've retained the sharpness, but there's no berserkness. And you've also got the stillness of the dull mind without the dull. So you've got super sharp and super still. Now, these we never have together. We're either berserk or we're spaced out. So the whole of the meditation, the 9 stages, is the lessening of the excitement and the lessening of the dullness, and the mind gets ever more subtle, ever less excited, ever less dull, less excited, less dull, until eventually it's totally still, totally calm, totally focused. And if you read Lama Yeshe's words describing the experiences of the yogis when you've got this, as he says, it's unimaginable. The mind is unbelievable. And the bonus is also it's blissful. So I'm describing my own language, okay? Are we communicating? So this takes, so to stop the mind, to use this skill of cultivating this focus, to not follow the excitement and not to sink into the dullness, it's this demands enormous courage, perseverance, confidence, and effort. Don't think it doesn't. I mean, this is where they talk about, like, you know, in Zen and in Mahamudra, in Dzogchen, they talk about effortless. And this is, I mean, this is difficult though. It's like being in the zone, how all these people talk. It's easy to talk like that, but you need a method to how to get it. And it depends on the kind of person you are, you know? So but in general, we all know to achieve anything, to turn into a tennis player, to turn into a musician and a mathematician, whatever it is, you have to work hard. You've got to have confidence. You've got to keep picking yourself up. You've got to keep going, keep going, keep going. Of course, eventually that becomes effortless. It's not stress, you know. This is really true, as Amma describes it in Mahamudra. But it demands, you know, not giving up, basically. You can't achieve anything if you give up. This is really obvious. And that takes courage. That takes a lot of courage, actually. So, okay, so there are various parts of the mind that we're trying to cultivate in concentration. So the first one, you know, these mechanics, as I call them. So you're sitting down and then you're going to decide, I'm going to do concentration meditation for 5 minutes. So you first of all have to have an object. That's in this type of style, different ones, as you know, as Wolfgang said. But the first one is and it's easier because you need, the mind is always doing, see, the mind is, they call subject. And by definition, all parts of our mind, whether it's visual, ear, mental, it always has something as its object. So here, then we're trying to choose an object to decide to focus on, to anchor our mind. It really is helpful. So one of the first ones that the Lord Buddha taught was the breath, you know, the breath, because it happens naturally. You don't have to conjure it. You don't have to remember to breathe. It just happens. So it's a really helpful thing to anchor your mind to. So, okay, then so let's just look at the words. We say, I am meditating. Let's say you sit down, you cross your legs, you get your body in the right position, and then you decide to start your concentration meditation. And so then you say, I am meditating. Well, let's analyze that for a second. What's I mean? I is the term you use for this person here. So what part of I is meditating? Well, honey, it's your mind. It's not your body. So you narrow it down to the mind. But now you should check, well, what part of my mind, which bits of my mind am I going to employ in this technique? You need to be precise like this. Well, the part of your mind you're going to employ first is the part called attention. Like we talked last module, there are several states of mind that are there all the time. Anyone missing would be a mad person. Of course, we don't pay attention to them. We don't notice. One of them is attention. The first is intention. I will watch the breath. That's your first thought. I will watch the breath. If you don't have that intention, you won't watch your breath, I promise. So the first one is intention. I will watch the breath. Now what happens is the next part of your mind, attention, it homes in, and now you pay attention to the breath. So if you want to analyze the very precise part of your mind that's doing the looking at the breath is attention. Now, because we're distracted by our crazy thoughts, and they're going to come barging in, attachment will come barging in, anger, and then the attention will wander off and you'll think about your boyfriend. Now, this is where mindfulness, you can use, if you like, you can say your mindfulness will catch, it's watching, and it will catch that you wandered off. So the mindfulness will catch the attention and bring it back to the breath. That's what you do. Mainly, that's what you're practicing. That's the technique that you're doing. Like you want to ride a bike, what part of you? Your body. Then what part of you? Your leg goes here, one leg goes there. And then you have to know the technique. You put your feet on the pedals. You hold the handlebars. This is your body. But then you fall off the bike. What have you got to do? You don't start spacing out, looking at the sky. What was I doing here? Oh, I've got to get back on the bike. So that's what you do. Your mind, the attention is strong for a second, and then because of the habit of never stopping thinking, the mind wanders off into something else. But the mindfulness is like watching, and then that this is its job. Mindfulness brings the attention back to the object, and your session will consist mostly of that. Just like you practice riding a bike for 5 minutes, the session will consist of you putting yourself back on the bike. Maybe you stay on the bike for 3 seconds of those 5 minutes. That's what's called practice, honeys. So it's a very precise thing. You've got to be, you know, when we think meditation, just close your eyes and cross your fingers and hope for the best. I mean, the ones that Wolfgang's talking about, in a way, there are different techniques. There are many, many methods. So Mahamudra sounds easier, but actually it's an advanced person who can do Mahamudra. It's the irony of it, you know, it looks easier, but the person who's qualified, who can cultivate, can utilize it properly, would be a person who's done a lot of inner work already. I'd say that. So that's technically what you're doing. The job is to keep your attention on the breath. The job is to stay on the bike. Mindfulness catches and remembers that you fell off the bike. If you have no mindfulness and you're riding the bike and you fall off and you forget that you're riding a bike, you look at the sky. Oh, what a lovely sky. It might be lovely. It's not your job. Mindfulness brings you back onto the bike. They say that mindfulness brings you back to the object. And eventually it becomes like concentration. You know, you stay on the object. You don't forget what you're doing. So that's really what you're doing every second. That's it. That's the job. So it demands effort. So naturally what's going to happen, because you're watching your breath, you see, the aim is not to force the thoughts to go away. The aim is not to have no thoughts. That's not the aim. It's absurd. The aim when you climb on a bike is not to be like Lance Armstrong. Eventually you'll become like Lance Armstrong. Right now it's just to stay on the damn bike. Eventually, you know, you'll have no thoughts. You'll be able to be at a subtle level where the conceptuality has ceased. But that's coming. You're starting the process humbly by staying on the bike. So here you start, you have to have that mindfulness continuously working to bring your attention back to the object. That's the job. That's the job. That's the job. Now, there's one more part of the mind. His Holiness calls it the policeman. And it's another crucial piece of these mechanics of the mind that plays a role in this job of developing concentration. And that's called alertness or vigilance. And His Holiness says that's kind of another part that's like a policeman, even watching mindfulness, that makes sure all the bits are doing their job nicely, you know, because there's many other parts of your mind working as well. There's discrimination that's continuously working, that's discriminating between this and that, making sure it's doing the right thing. There's one called feeling that's always happening there. There's a whole bunch working, but these are the proactive ones, you know. Are we communicating here, people? Have I said too many thoughts? Am I confusing you? Ask me some questions now. Ask me some questions, please.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Please raise your hand. Or you can chat, write a question in the box. I know I have a quick one, just on your last statement, if that's okay. Just I missed the transition. So the policeman of the mind, the alert, this is the alertness or vigilance, and it's watching mindfulness. Did you say?
Well, you can say it like it. It's kind of watching that all the bits are doing nicely. All the bits are working.
Okay. Yeah, if all the bits are working. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm just focusing on the two bits that are mainly the attention is the part that's watching, and then the mindfulness is bringing the attention back to where it should be.
Okay, right.
That's where we're occupied. And alertness, I mean, there's many other parts of your mind. Like I said before last module, there are 5 always present mental factors. Attention is one of them. Intention is one. Discrimination is another. So discrimination is working continuously there. And that's the part of the mind that can distinguish between this and that, second by second by second. So there's all these bits. Sort of, in other words, I will say, I'm holding a thermos. Let's be precise. My right hand is holding a thermos. Let's be precise. Look at the fire. Each finger does its job. We don't do it consciously because they're all practiced. Each finger does its job beautifully. Well, that's the same with our mind. All these parts are all working away. That's why it's so important to study the model of the mind, the pieces of the mind that are all doing their jobs. So the pieces we're functioning, mostly working with here, are attention is the bit that's watching, supported by all the other bits, and then the mindfulness's job is the biggest one in the beginning, is to keep bringing the attention back to the object. And then then when that develops, you stay on the object, and that's when you stay. We know ourselves, if you're really angry with somebody, you could be in the middle of a football field of screaming people. You will be able to stay focused on that person you're angry with. You won't get distracted. If you're really attached to somebody, you can stay focused. You don't get distracted. Do you see what I'm saying? Because your attention is very strongly there. That's what we're trying to do here. Our attention is very weak now. I mean, who wants to watch their breath? It's so boring. There's no attachment to your breath. But the reason we're trying to pay attention to the breath is so that when the mindfulness does develop and it stays on the breath, then you pay less attention to all the crazy stuff. The mind gets ever deeper, and then literally, eventually, you don't hear all the stuff, literally calms down. But it's mistaken to think that your session is successful based upon the fact that your thoughts stopped. No. Like I said before, the biggest benefit is your thoughts are going to sound crazy in the beginning. Be glad you're seeing them. Be delighted. Welcome them. But you can still stay focused. In other words, you're on the road, in the freeway, with craziness all around you. You know if you can stay focused. I mean, it's an interesting experience. 25, I was in Germany at our center in Munich. And then we went to one, was it before the East? I forget now. The East was still the East. And I know there's this big road. I forget now. Wolfgang will know. This big road that gets you to Berlin. And it's like in between the East and the West, isn't it? This is some kind of big road. And we had to drive. We had a big conference in Berlin. And I decided I'd drive on the way back. And we had this big van with all our exhibition stuff in it. And at some point, there's one lane which I got into that had yellow cones either side, because it was roadworks, and I had to drive like at 150 kilometers an hour in this lane for, I don't know, like 2 hours. I thought I'd die. There was no way in the universe I could not have perfect mindfulness. There's not if I had 1 second freaked out, I would have smashed into smithereens and killed 20 people, you know. I'll never forget the intensity of that concentration. So everything was berserk around these hugely fast cars in Germany. They drive about 100, 200 kilometers an hour, you know, effortlessly. So I never forget as long as I lived. And there was huge energy all around me, but I had to stay focused. I had to stay concentrated. I'll never forget it. It was like incredible experience, I tell you. I survived. I didn't die. Look at me. I'm still here. So you're on the freeway, you know you've got to have focus. And as soon as you start getting distracted, that's when you go berserk. We can see that. So you're not saying to the cars, get off the road so I can concentrate. You've got to concentrate in the chaos, okay? So we've got to learn to concentrate in the chaos of our own mind, and don't be scared of it. Don't think you've failed because it's all there. The job is, one, to become familiar so you can use that in daily life. And then eventually in your meditation, it will become calmer as you get more mindful, as you get more concentration. It's a process, you know, but it takes effort, no question, but it should be joyful effort. Are we communicating? I mean, I forget your question now, Tara, but that was a long answer.
Yeah, no, that's okay. The answer got answered in the beginning.
Okay, we'll try
Good.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other questions, please, people?
Any other questions?
So the technique is just like riding a bike. Your job is to stay on the seat, isn't it? You fall off, you get back on again. That's it. Don't make it complicated. Not, oh, mummy, I can't ride a bike. I'll kill myself. I fell off. Well, honey, get back on again. Practice. Same here. You have to have that mindfulness, watching like a hawk, and it brings your attention back to the breath. That's the actual job that you are doing. The result will be, if you keep doing it, you know, success. Be patient and be humble. Meanwhile, in the corner of your mind, you're hearing all the crazy thoughts. Be happy. You're seeing your crazy mind, you know, it's wonderful.
Good.
Yes.
We have a question.
Yeah. Yes, Shmuel, talk to me.
Yes, I have a question. Have you heard of deep breathing as a preliminary to this sort of meditation?
No, I don't know about that. The one that we do in our tradition is called the 9-round breathing. And we'll go into that as one of our techniques. I mean, there's so many things around, you know, but I haven't learned that one. All of these things are quite possible, but the one that we would learn is called the 9-round breathing. We won't do it today. We'll do it next week. It's a very nice little technique that steadies your energy down before you do your meditation. Yeah, similar idea, I'd say, Shmuel. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
Roz.
Yes, Roz.
Microphone, Roz.
Hello, Roz.
Hi, Rabina.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, is there a point where you know to shift from your kind of concentration to an analytical? Do you know when you're ready to make that?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
shift?
It all depends on what session you want to do. So if you are deciding you want to do concentration, so when Venerable Rene went into his retreat, he was only doing concentration. The retreat was to get concentration. You don't do other things. He would have done, you know, even you might even do less of your other practices. But if you want to, if you are particularly deciding you want to practice a really strong session of doing concentration only, that's perfectly fine. But let's say you want to go home today after this course and do your homework, quote unquote. The first thing you would do is get to the degree that you have any concentration. You can't force it. You can't go beyond what you're capable of. So maybe you do 3 or 4 minutes of just trying to stabilize your mind a little bit. And then you'd go to the second mode and you'd take the things you studied and you'd familiarize your mind with them to try to get some insight and get some feeling. So that's very much up to what you're capable of. But if you like say have achieved the 5th stage of concentration, well, wow, you do that first, and then even at that subtle level, you would still use that to do your analysis. But that level of analysis is so brilliant, so sophisticated, so subtle, so amazing that that's how you get realizations, you know. So we do what we're capable of, Roz.
Okay, thank you.
You understand, darling?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So yes, Jeff. Jeff has a question.
Actually, it's me, Venerable Cyril.
Cyril, hi Cyril, talk to me.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can see, I can't see you.
Cyril is in the compass, so
there
Oh,
he
I
is.
see. Okay, talk to me, Cyril. Come close.
Can you hear me now?
Okay,
Can
good.
you,
Oh, yeah.
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, my question is, why does every time when I meditate on the breath, I get the feeling that I'm controlling the breath, and my breath is not natural anymore.
I think you just have to relax more and just know the job you're trying to do. Maybe you're not clear what you're trying to accomplish. What do you think you're trying to accomplish by watching the breath? What is in your mind? What are you deciding you're doing? Literally spell out to me exactly what you think you're doing when you sit down to watch your breath, Cyril.
Achieving concentration?
No, that's too theoretical. Literally, technically, like you're describing to me what to do. Will you climb on the bike? You put your left on the pedal. So tell me technically what you decide to do when you do the session.
I decide to...
What do you sit? You sit down, you close your eyes, and then what do you do?
Keep my attention on the breath.
Okay, then, well, darling, try and just keep doing that and not get too tight. And if you start to think you're controlling your breath, just try and relax, because it's not the job it's not the job you're trying to do. Just try to relax more and just simply watch the breath. Just try to just watch it, but don't get too conceptual about it. Okay. Does that make sense, Cyril?
Yes, yes.
All I can suggest is that.
It's just this feeling of control. I don't like it, so I prefer to watch my thoughts.
Okay, then you have to tell me more.
I don't have this feeling of control when I'm watching my thoughts, but when I'm watching my breath, I get this feeling of control. So
okay, then why don't you tell me what that means? You've got to tell me what you mean, Cyril, because I hear your words, but I don't understand. Because a feeling of control is already conceptual. You're being conceptual about it. You're describing it. And that's not the job. I don't know what to say. I mean, you're telling yourself I'm controlling my breath. You've just got to be watching it. Try not to have any conceptual thoughts at all. You're just trying to watch it come and watch it go. Or then maybe you decide to focus on something else and not your breath, you know? I don't know. Okay. But so your goal is, you simply just breathe naturally and you try to, because the breath is just there, not because there's anything special about the breath. It's just something convenient, you know? Do you understand?
It just doesn't feel like when I'm not watching my breath, it feels like my breath is different than when I'm watching it.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say. I just have to try. All I can recommend is you try and relax a bit. I don't know what else to say, Cyril. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Any more questions, people, before we go?
Any other questions? We have maybe the long life prayer.
No, don't do that.
Not yet. No.
At the end of each module, maybe it's okay.
Okay.
So anybody got any more questions? I mean, I've said a lot of things in my own words, and I don't want to confuse you because I'm trying to sort of express it in my words, but trying to be correct as well. So I hope I haven't confused you.
So maybe I'll just ask then, so basically there's the 2 modes of meditation, and you're thinking you have concentration, you have analytical, and you can do either one.
I prefer to call them concentration and vipassana, which is insight. The method we use to get insight into the teachings and insight into the visualizations is analysis. That's the way to say it.
And okay, so for the insight, for example, if
We
we
haven't
don't,
discussed that yet at all.
we can actually like
We haven't
read.
discussed insight at all yet. Mainly
Ah.
the conclusion has been, the technique I began to discuss is concentration, the first one.
Okay, but we did talk a bit about analytical, didn't we?
I didn't discuss how to do it. I mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing I want people to conclude, the general understanding of the use of the word meditation, but for everyone's sake, Tara, maybe summarize what I said about how to do the first mode, how to do concentration. Summarize.
Summarize how to do concentration.
Well, I just said what I ended. Yeah, what did I say? Summarize what I said.
The memory issues. Okay, so I'm going to have to make it up for my own words.
Make it up. That is irresponsible. Don't know the words and say nothing.
Okay, I'll say nothing.
Well, then if you have a question, ask the question.
Okay, no, I was trying to distinguish between the two. So my language was incorrect. We have concentration meditation. We have analytical meditation, which is insight. But right now, tonight, we're focusing on concentration.
No, Tara, no.
Okay. Okay.
In the Lam Rim, it is true the Tibetans talk about focusing meditation and analysis. It's true. It's correct, not wrong. But technically, if you look in the 6 perfections, the last 2 are the names of the result of the 2 modes of meditation. The name of the result of the first one is called calm abiding, shamatha. And it's a state of very powerful, subtle concentration. That is the goal of that type of meditation, which I just described before, starting with the object of focusing on the breath. Now, the only reason you want concentration is so that you can now go to the second mode where you want to end up with insight. Now, insight into what? Insight into impermanence, insight into karma, insight into compassion, insight into emptiness, insight into all the different components of the Buddha's view of the universe. Insight into those, which means a direct experience of the truth of those. So what's the method we use to do that? That's called analysis. It's a fancy word for to think about it. So what I'm trying to say before was that's how we learn everything. But as I've also mentioned, there are other kinds of meditation called visualization. That is also a type of analysis, but it's visual, but it's the same methodology. And the goal is the same, get insight into your own, insight into the Buddha, insight so you can become the Buddha.
So concentration, the name of the result is calm abiding or shamatha. And the only reason that we do concentration is that we do want to get to the second mode, which we're not discussing, but we want to get to the second mode.
Tara, what are you trying to say here?
I'm trying to summarize. I'm trying to summarize.
But for your benefit or someone else's? You said you didn't have any questions, but you seem to have a question.
I was trying to summarize. I guess for my benefit to understand for the whole
I've just summarized. So why do you want to repeat what I just said? I just did it again.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, I'm happy. It's enough.
Okay.
Thank you. You're so kind. Thank you so much. Okay.
No problem.
Okay, darling. Thank you so much. So I think this is the trouble. These things are not complicated, but because we've got so many other misconceptions about them, it's really confusing to us. And it's not confusing in its nature. These are really simple processes. But we've got so many other misconceptions about them. They're blocking our ability to hear them, That's our problem. Anyway, I hope it's been some food for thought, some helpful, something we can discuss with each other. And then I think even your homework is even try to do 5 minutes of contact. Sit on your cushion, make a motivation. I'm going to attempt to watch my breath so I can develop my qualities so I can be a benefit to others. And you simply close your eyes, you locate the sensation here, you do the proper body. We didn't discuss that, but we'll do that next week, but do your best, the 9 stages, the 8 points of the body. I didn't do that. We'll do that again. And then you just simply for 3 minutes, 3 minutes is good. You locate the breath, and then you decide, I'm going to pay attention to the breath. And then you can imagine your mindfulness watching like a hawk. Every time the intention wanders off, mindfulness brings it back. That's precisely the technique. Precisely, for the moment. Okay, that's it. Very simple. Okay, Petals.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, darling. So happy to see you all, and so happy, and just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And we dedicate, don't put the prayers up, I'll just say the words. We think here, we've been for 90 minutes, all these thoughts and lots of thoughts, because I speak so fast. That's why I always joke about this. I'm supposed to be embarrassing. Next module is one that I taught. So it's 3 times the length of the course. It's like 400 pages. Most course notes are like 100. You'll see it. So it's going to be lots of course notes for the next one. But all of these, you know, I'm just being stupid. I always joke about how fast I talk. People tell me I talk fast. I don't think so until people point it out. So if I've said too many thoughts and I've confused you, I'm really sorry. I've been making the effort to try and explain it clearly. Hope you can, but read Sangakara's nice, calm words. Her words are much calmer and clearer than mine. That'll help you get clear. And I think she already begins to talk about the techniques, but we'll go into that in more detail next week. But do a little bit of homework of watching your breath. Pay attention, okay? Pay attention. Mindfulness, bring it back to the object. Wanders off, bring it back. Wanders off, bring it back. Wanders off, just keep bringing it back. Not swearing at yourself and not meditating, not being dramatic and ridiculous, you know? You just keep bringing your mind back to the breath. That's the job. Until eventually you can stay on the bike. This is the point, isn't it? Okay, we dedicate thinking all these thoughts we've had, may the seeds we've sown, may we nourish these seeds from this second forward so we can develop our amazing potential, so we can be better sentient beings. Thank you, darlings. Much love.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thanks, sweethearts. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Venerable, for being there.
Thank you.